Hi, I'm Dr. David Dobson. Welcome to Conversations. Today, my guest is Dr. Chang Lu. Chang is an assistant professor at the University of the Fraser Valley School of Business. He received his PhD in strategic management and organization from the University of Alberta School of Business. Today, we will discuss his research on innovation, adoption, and what it takes to actually make new ideas stick. Chang, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me here.
Chang, you have a PhD in strategic management and have worked with everything from cutting edge blockchain technology to First Nation entrepreneurship. If you had to describe the common thread that connects these diverse contexts in one sentence, what would it be?
I think my research is concerned about the emergence and institutionalization of novelty. In the context of First Nation entrepreneurship, it's the institutionalization of First Nation enterprises as new type of enterprises. And in the case of blockchain adoption, it's the emergence and adoption of novel technologies, such as blockchain technology in highly institutional settings like healthcare.
Hmm, wonderful. In your book chapter, you mentioned that blockchain often suffers from negative stereotypes and perceived complexity. Is adoption a technological problem or a cultural problem?
Yeah, so in the book chapter I've published, which focuses on blockchain in healthcare, I suggest that blockchain adoption in healthcare, at least, is more of a cultural problem instead of a technical problem. The healthcare sector is known for the culture that is risk averse and conservative. And blockchain technology is known to be risky and cutting edge. And many people still don't know what is blockchain technology exactly, and whether blockchain technology can indeed bring about higher productivity and improve well-being and organizational performance.
Mm,
Uh, so, in the face of technical uncertainty of blockchain technology, even though a lot of healthcare organizations decided to try the adoption of blockchain to, for example, enhance patient data sharing or patient data safety and privacy, they found out that the adoption process was quite challenging. Oftentimes, the champions for blockchain adoption in healthcare organizations met a lot of resistance from incumbents or from powerful actors who would either ignore the importance of blockchain adoption or do something intentionally to prevent adoption from happening. And after interviewing with healthcare professionals and blockchain technologists, I suggest that the challenge for blockchain adoption in healthcare mostly comes from the cultural sphere,
mm,
because the culture is risk averse. When healthcare organizations adopt any type of technology, whether it's blockchain or even if it's just a traditional database,
mm,
they will meet a lot of resistance. And those resistance is culture based, uh, comes from the fact that people have very embedded beliefs and values in the old systems, and they are resistant to change.
mm. Good point. So you have studied blockchain in the life sciences and healthcare sectors, two of the most highly regulated and institutionalized industry. Why is it hard to innovate in regulated sectors? And what is the unobtrusive implementation strategy you recommend for managers?
Yeah, so there are a couple of reasons why innovation adoption is very difficult in highly regulated contexts. The first reason is that regulations often creates barriers for innovation adoption. Regulations lay out what is uh, uh, what is durable and what is not durable, and what professionals should do and what professionals should not do. And those guidelines give people a sense of direction, but in the meantime, they can also constrain behaviors, especially innovative behaviors. And we know that for technology adoption to happen in any context, people have to change their behavior, and they need to do things in a different way, in a new way. And oftentimes, those new way of doing things will be considered as uh, inappropriate or uh, or challenging to the existing regulations. So, yeah, the first reason why innovation adoption is difficult in highly regulated industries is the regulation themselves.
Mm,
And the second reason is, again, the cultural reason, which I have mentioned early on. In regulated industries, oftentimes you can see that the culture is very conservative and risk averse.
mm,
And I think that has something to do with the fact that the industries are highly regulated. When people work under regulation all the time, they develop some sort of fear that if they don't do things 100% according to regulations, they will be penalized
mm,
in one way or another. Then over time, their mindset becomes conservative. And when everybody's mindset becomes conservative, then the entire culture just becomes conservative.
mm,
And yeah, I think that's another reason why innovation adoption tends to be difficult in highly regulated contexts.
mm,
And in my published work, I did mention the concept of unobtrusive implementation, which basically means that uh, it's possible for innovation adoption to happen in highly regulated contexts, but if you are a champion of a certain innovation, you may not necessarily champion that technology in a way that is promoted by the literature on change management traditionally. So if you look at the mainstream literature on change management, they always say that if you are going to promote a certain technology or new practice, first you need to create a lot of momentum. You need to problematize the current situation and create a sense of urgency. And then you need to mobilize different stakeholders. So basically, it's going to be a very loud and heroic process. But in highly regulated contexts, if you are very loud in implementing change, chances are that you are just going to meet a lot of resistance. Conservative people and conservative culture will stand up and resist you. So instead of being loud, you can be quiet and be unobtrusive. So you can start applying the technology in some gradual ways and show stakeholders that this technology can bring about incremental changes and have incremental positive impact. And then gradually they will open their minds and maybe there is a bigger chance for you to really implement that technology.
You speak about a lack of ecosystem mindset. Does blockchain require us to stop thinking about our own companies as the hub and start thinking about the whole industry as a single interconnected web?
Yeah, I would say so. So blockchain is really connected to the idea of Web3. For those who don't know what is Web3, I'll just give you a very simple explanation. Uh, People say that there are three stages internet. The first one is Web 1.0.
Mm,
That's the stage where we only read from the internet. So that's at the time, I think, between the 1990s and early 2000s, where we just used a browser
mm,
to collect information from the internet.
mm,
And then there's Web 2.0. That's the age where we not only read from the internet, but we also write
mm,
in the internet.
mm,
And that's the time period between early 2000s and late 2010s. And the specific use cases for that internet age would be, let's say, social media,
mm,
right? So if we go on Facebook or Instagram, we not only read information from those applications, but we also make comments, we post, we write on those applications as well. So that's Web 2.0. And then Web 3.0 is a age where we not only read and write, but also own on the internet. Yeah, so in Web 2.0, even though we post a lot of information on the internet, on our social media accounts, we don't own our data. Those big tech companies like Facebook, they own our data. But in Web3, the idea is that each individual user will be the owner of their information on the internet. And blockchain can support that. So if we build an entire internet on the top of blockchain, then basically, because blockchain is a peer-to-peer network, the entire internet will become decentralized, and there will be nodes, big nodes that support the internet operation. But each one of us will have wallets on the internet, and in those wallets, we will have our information stored, and we will also be owning those information in the wallets. Yeah, so if we are really kind of in a Web 3.0 world supported by blockchain, then all the actors, whether it's individuals or organizations, will be connected closely, right? So in that manner, all the organizations and individuals should think about how they can complement each other in a certain way, and also how their activities can be added to each other's activities. So I would say it's a more interconnected world than the world we kind of have. And in that world, everybody's existence basically relies on others' existence. And that's why I say in that world, the ecosystem mindset will be very important.
Speaking of interconnected systems, your work also explores how communities use specific economic tools to navigate much larger historical systems. Your recent research looks at First Nations in Canada using casinos as a tool for emancipation from post-colonialism. Can you explain the concept of emancipatory entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so in the entrepreneurship literature, it used to be that entrepreneurs engage in startup activities to pursue personal wealth. That was main assumption behind traditional entrepreneurship literature. But in 2010, a few scholars published a very important article on the Academy of Management Review, saying that actually a lot of entrepreneurs, they start entrepreneurship not to pursue personal wealth, but to pursue emancipation, to emancipate themselves from constraints, whether it's social constraints, ecological constraint, or political constraint. And they also recognize that not only individual entrepreneurs can engage in entrepreneurship for emancipation, but also communities and social groups can do so as well. So in the case of First Nations, we all know that First Nations has suffered from poverty and stigmatization in a very long time. And in the 1990s, they were running out of the resources. And also they realized that they could not really depend on the federal government for economic growth. And they really wanted to free themselves from the post-colonial economic system and social system and political system. So they decided to build casinos. And the idea is that once they have casinos, then they will have economic independence. They won't have to rely on government subsidy for social programs, healthcare, and housing. And in that way, they can emancipate themselves from discrimination, from colonialism, and so on. Yeah, so Actually, it's not just First Nations engage in entrepreneurship for emancipation. In some other countries, for example, the Middle East, you can see that women sometimes engage in some sort of entrepreneurship, like small businesses, to emancipate themselves from extreme patriarchy.
Mm, wonderful. Cheng, you found that partial acquiescence or something playing by the rules of those who stigmatize you is actually a strategic move. How does a stigmatized group balance staying true to their mission while dealing with an external audience that might be biased against them?
Yes, so this notion of partial acquiescence really came from my research on First Nations emancipatory entrepreneurship in the gambling field. I found that when First Nations created the casinos for themselves, they oftentimes met repercussions or resistance from established actors. For example, the regulators back then were criticizing about First Nations decorations of the casinos. They said that there are too many First Nation indigenous cultural elements in the casinos, or they criticize First Nations for allowing smoking in the casinos. And we know that in Canada, in most public spaces, smoking is prohibited. First Nations allowed customers to smoke in the casinos, uh, partly because in the First Nations culture, smoking is not just a health matter, it's also a spiritual matter. First Nations oftentimes in their ceremonies burn tobacco to reminisce their ancestors. So First Nations allowed customers to smoke in the casinos uh, for as a way to kind of practice their culture. But in the meantime, there was also benefit to this practice because lots of people actually prefer to smoke in the casinos. And then the regulators said, no, you should not allow smoking to happen in the casinos because all the other casinos that are non-First Nations, they do not allow smoking. So if you allow smoking, you will create an unfair competition with those casinos. Then First Nations had to compromise. They did not want to compromise, but eventually they decided to compromise. They start creating smoking areas in the casinos, or some First Nation casinos just decide to ban smoking altogether. And I find that this kind of a temporary or partial acquiescence to the mainstream society actually was beneficial to First Nations in achieving their emancipation goals. Because when they compromised to regulators back then, even though some of the compromises were just partial or temporary, they formed more collaborative relationships with the regulators. And then the regulators start to provide more resources and support for the casinos, which helped the casinos grow and develop, which then helped First Nations achieve the economic goals, economic emancipation, which then leads to better political and social emancipation.
Mm. How does your research on indigenous entrepreneurship change the way we should think about success in the business world?
In the business world, lots of times when we look at the success of a company, we look at the balance sheet, we look at
Mm,
the profit, revenue, and asset liability, and so on and so forth. My research on the First Nation casinos, specifically from the angle of entrepreneurial emancipation, suggests that sometimes businesses can be very successful if they achieve great social goals, if they can help elevate a stigmatized group, if they can help people get out of poverty, if they can help a certain social group gain independence or autonomy. Yeah, so I think my research helps expand the metrics that we use to measure success of business.
Redefining success is a powerful goal, but it often requires a specific kind of leadership within those legacy systems. You talk about embedded agency, the idea that we can change a system even while we are stuck inside it. For a leader feeling trapped by a rigid corporate culture, what is the first step to exercising that embedded agency?
It's a great question. And since we just talk about entrepreneurship as emancipation, I would suggest those leaders who are currently stuck in corporations to explore entrepreneurship as a way to emancipate themselves from corporate constraints. And as a matter of fact, when the scholars who proposed the concept of the concept of emancipatory entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship as emancipation, they wrote in the article that sometimes entrepreneurs become entrepreneurs just because they are very tired of their old jobs
Mm,
or the corporate environment. They want to have more autonomy and freedom in their lives.
mm,
So that's why they become entrepreneurs. Yes. So I think leaders who are trapped in the corporate environment right now are very well positioned to become emancipatory entrepreneurs. And going back to the concept of embedded agency, they know how the corporate world works. They know how to do business, and they have all the connections that they have built over the years. So they are embedded in the corporate world, but because of this embeddedness, they know how to run the corporate world. And if they decide to just kind of divorce from their current corporation and start create their own business, I would say they may have a great chance of success.
right. The concept of agency is something every future leaders need to understand.
Mhm.
As a professor of strategic management and organizational behavior, what is the one myth about entrepreneurship that you find yourself constantly having to debunk in the classroom for your students?
Yes, so a lot of students think that entrepreneurship is all about improvisation. If you have a good business idea, you just go
Mm,
about it and
mm,
build a business and done. But that's a very big misconception. Uh, Entrepreneurship should be a systematic endeavor. So I always tell my students that if you want to uh, own your own business, become an entrepreneur, you should start to develop your business skills and actually learn, for example, how to write a business plan, how to make a pitch, entrepreneurial pitch, and also develop your leadership skills and develop your communication skills. So you have to consider entrepreneurship as a systematic work. Systematic work. It's not just that you have an idea and then you go about it and you succeed. Of course, you have to have very strong improvisation or creativity
mm,
during entrepreneurship process.
mm,
But if you think that entrepreneurship is all about improvisation, that's just a misconception.
mm. Chang, if a student wants to enter the blockchain space today, should they focus on learning the code or learning the social organization barriers you write about?
I think if a student wants to enter the blockchain space today, probably the first thing is not to learn theories. The first thing is actually to go to meet people and talk to people. There are lots of free networking events in the blockchain space, very open to all types of attendees. And I would encourage students to go to those events and just get some exposure and just get a very intuitive sense of the space and what people are talking about and the emergent topics. And just to see if actually you are interested in that space.
Mm,
Yeah, if you are interested, then I think then you can probably take some courses on Coursera about the technical aspects of blockchain, and then you can read my research about the organizational business aspect of blockchain. Um, so in the blockchain space, the idea of a community is very, very important. So I would encourage students to first embed themselves into the community
Mhm.
if they want to enter the space.
Social organizational barriers is clearly the key to real impact. Chang, your work focuses on how novelty grows in difficult context. Looking ahead, what innovation are you most excited to see gain mainstream adoption?
I think probably it's going to be AI. Yeah, I know AI is a huge topic and everybody is talking about AI. And I'm actually looking forward to seeing how AI will be adopted in education specifically because I'm in education.
Mhm.
And these days, I think all the educators face challenges when it comes to AI because students are using AI for their assignments, for their presentations, sometimes even use AI to write emails to professors. And we are worried that students may actually lose their cognitive abilities when they continue to use AI. But in the meantime, I think we can also not deny that AI is going to be the future and it will be used by students in one way or another. So I'm very curious about how the future will look like, where AI is kind of intertwined with education. We don't know exactly how it will look like, but I'm curious. I'm very looking forward to seeing some kind of imagery or picture of that future.
Chang, thank you for sharing your research and your insights with us today. Wishing you the very best with your ongoing research and teaching in the field.
Thank you, and again, thank you for having me here. It was a pleasure.